On the far edge of known space, a massive alien station called Varelian Hub drifted between quiet stars. The station was home to thousands of species, each minding their own business, trading goods and avoiding trouble. Among them was a human, Marcus Hale. He wasn't a soldier, a pilot, or a scientist. He was just a janitor. Marcus didn't mind his job. Every day he cleaned corridors, repaired old drones, and kept the air filters running. It was simple work, the kind no one noticed until it wasn't done. He liked it that way. No one expected much from him, and that gave him peace. Humans were rare on Varelian Hub. Most of the alien residents saw them as a lower species, useful but unimportant. Marcus had learned to ignore the looks and whispers. He wasn't there to impress anyone. He just wanted quiet. His small room sat deep in the maintenance sector, near the power conduits. It was barely big enough for a bed, a table, and an old radio that hummed with static. But to Marcus it was home. After his long shifts, he would heat a cup of tea, stare at the stars through the small viewport, and think about Earth, the home he hadn't seen in 15 years. One evening during a late shift, Marcus was cleaning the lower corridors. The lights flickered, and the hum of the power systems echoed through the metal walls. He had just finished scrubbing an oil spill when he heard a faint sound, a soft cry. It was so quiet he thought he imagined it. He stood still, listening. The sound came again. It wasn't machinery. It was someone. Marcus followed the noise down a narrow passageway until he reached a vent cover. The crying was louder now, shaky and full of fear. He knelt and shined his small flashlight inside. There, huddled in the corner of the vent, was a small alien child. Her skin was pale blue, and her large eyes reflected the light like glass. She looked thin and weak, covered in dust and bruises. And where one of her 4 arms should have been, there was only a scarred stump. Marcus blinked, shocked. Hey, it's okay, he said softly. I'm not gonna hurt you. The child flinched, pressing herself deeper into the vent. She tried to speak, but her words were broken, a mix of alien syllables and weak sobs. Marcus slowly lowered his cleaning cloth and reached a hand toward her, palm up. It's all right, he said. You're safe. For a moment nothing happened. Then, trembling, the child reached out and touched his hand. Her skin was cold. Marcus gently pulled her out of the vent. She was lighter than he expected, barely strong enough to stand. What are you doing here, kid? He murmured. You shouldn't be down here. Before she could answer, heavy footsteps echoed from the hall. 2 station guards appeared, tall, armored, and clearly not happy. One of them pointed at the child. Is that a defective? He growled. It shouldn't be alive. Marcus frowned. Hey, what? The guard's voice was flat. A defective unit. Missing limbs. Unfit for service. The protocol says she gets recycled. Marcus stepped between them. She's a child, not a machine. The guard sneered. She's Varelian. You humans don't understand. Weak ones don't survive. He moved forward, raising his shock staff. Marcus's heart pounded. You're not touching her. The guard glared down at him. You're going to protect it? Marcus's voice shook, but he didn't back down. Yeah, I am. For a moment no one moved. Then the guard gave a disgusted snort. Fine. Keep it. But don't come crying to us when it dies. The guards turned and left, muttering about humans and their foolishness. Marcus waited until they were gone before kneeling beside the child again. Don't worry, he said quietly. They're gone now. The child looked up at him, her eyes full of confusion and fear. Marcus smiled softly. Let's get you cleaned up, huh? He wrapped her in his old jacket and carried her back to his room. When he set her down on the small bed, she stared around with wide eyes, taking in everything. The tools, the little lamp, the hum of the radio. Marcus found some water and a ration pack. She hesitated at first but then ate carefully and slowly. When she finished, she gave him a small, uncertain look, as if waiting for him to tell her what to do. He knelt beside her. You got a name? She tilted her head, not understanding. All right, he said. Guess we'll have to find you one. He thought for a moment, then smiled. How about Lyra? It's from an old star back home. The child blinked, then repeated softly, Lyra. Marcus chuckled. Yeah, that's it. Over the next few weeks, Marcus kept her hidden. He built her a new prosthetic arm from spare drone parts. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. She learned quickly, watching how he moved and copied his actions. She even tried to help him clean, though she often made more mess than progress. At night, she would sit beside him and stare out the small window at the stars. Sometimes she asked questions in broken words. Marcus answered patiently, teaching her little by little. He never asked where she came from. He could guess. The nobles of the Varelian species were known for perfection. A child like her, born imperfect, would have been cast out. One night as he tucked her in, Lyra looked up and asked, "Why help me?" Marcus smiled softly. "Because someone has to." She reached out with her new robotic hand and touched his. "Family?" she asked hesitantly. Marcus's chest tightened. He nodded. "Yeah, kid. Family." Years would pass before Marcus truly understood what that moment meant. For now it was enough that the small room felt less empty, the long days less lonely. And somewhere deep in the old metal heart of Varelian Hub, a forgotten janitor and a broken child began something that would one day change the stars. 10 years had passed since Marcus Hale found Lyra hiding in the vent on Varelian Hub. The years had changed them both. Marcus's hair was grayer and his back ached more than before, but his eyes still carried the same quiet strength. Lyra had grown tall, her skin a deep shimmering blue now, and her cybernetic arm worked almost perfectly. She was strong, fast, and clever, able to fix engines and repair drones faster than most trained engineers. They lived together in the same small quarters in the maintenance decks. The room was now filled with Lyra's inventions, tiny drones that zipped around cleaning surfaces, and small lamps powered by leftover energy cells. The two worked side by side, repairing ships and systems for anyone who needed help. Most aliens didn't ask questions. They just paid in food, spare parts, or credits and left them alone. That was how Marcus liked it. Lyra loved helping him. Every morning she would wake early, stretch her new arm, and check the schedule on the holoscreen. "Docking bay repairs at 6, she would say, smiling. Marcus would grunt and sip his tea. "You're starting to sound like my boss," he'd joke, and she would laugh, a soft, musical sound that filled their little home. For Marcus, life had become something peaceful again. He didn't think about the past anymore. He only thought about keeping Lyra safe, fed, and happy. She was his daughter in every way that mattered, and that was enough. But far away, beyond the edges of the station, trouble was growing. The Varelian Empire, the great power that ruled half the known galaxy, was in crisis. The Empress had been without her heir for 10 years. Her daughter had vanished during an uprising, and no one had ever found her. Rumors whispered through trade routes and across communication channels. The lost princess still lives. Marcus heard the stories now and then on the radio. He never paid much attention. The affairs of empires were far above a janitor's concern. But Lyra always looked thoughtful when the stories played. One evening as they ate dinner, she asked quietly, "Do you think it's true? That the Empress's daughter is still out there?" Marcus shrugged. "Maybe. Maybe not. Big people have their own problems. We just keep our heads down, yeah." Lyra nodded, but she didn't look convinced. Later that week, a transport ship from the inner worlds docked for repairs. Marcus and Lyra were called to fix a malfunction in its power core. It was a big job, so they worked through the night. The crew, mostly Varelian nobles, barely noticed them. But one of the officers, a tall man in dark armor, seemed to be watching Lyra closely. When she climbed out of the access tunnel, wiping grease from her face, the officer stepped forward. "You there?" he said, his tone sharp. "Where did you get that mark?" Lyra frowned. "What mark?" He pointed to her neck. There, faint but visible under the glow of the ship's lights, was a birthmark, an intricate swirl that shone faintly gold. Marcus had seen it before, of course. He'd thought it was just a natural pattern, something harmless. "It's nothing," Marcus said quickly. "Just a skin mark." The officer's expression hardened. "That mark belongs to the royal bloodline." Marcus's stomach dropped. "You've got the wrong person." The officer ignored him. He pulled out a small scanner and held it toward Lyra. The device beeped, then flashed bright gold. The officer froze. His voice shook when he spoke. "Identification confirmed. Royal genetic code detected." Lyra blinked, confused. "What does that mean?" Marcus stepped in front of her. "It means you're mistaken," he said firmly. "She's my daughter. You hear me? She's mine." The officer's hand went to his communicator. "This is Officer Rin of the Imperial Search Division. I've located the missing heir." Marcus grabbed his arm. "Wait, don't you dare take her." In seconds, more guards appeared. The docking bay filled with noise, voices, weapons charging, and flashing lights. Lyra looked terrified. Marcus held her close, his mind racing for a way out, but there was none. The guards surrounded them. "Don't hurt her," Marcus shouted. "She's just a kid." "She is no child," the officer said. "She is the Empress's daughter. The Empire has been searching for her for a decade." Lyra shook her head, tears in her eyes. "That can't be true. I don't even remember anything before you found me. Marcus's voice was low but steady. It doesn't matter who you were, Lyra. You're my family. That's all that matters. But the guards didn't listen. They placed a golden insignia on her arm, a royal tag, and ordered her to come with them. Marcus tried to follow, but one of the soldiers blocked his way. She stays with me, Marcus said. The soldier shook his head. She belongs to the Empire now. Marcus clenched his fists. No one owns her. Lyra turned back, reaching for him as the guards led her away. Marcus, she cried. You wanted to fight them all, but there were too many. It's all right, he shouted after her. I'll find you, Lyra. I promise. The guards dragged her toward the shuttle. Marcus tried to push through, but a rifle struck his shoulder, sending him to the ground. He watched helplessly as the shuttle doors closed and the engines flared to life. Within seconds, the ship lifted off, disappearing into the dark sky above the station. The docking bay was silent again except for the hum of the power systems. Marcus sat there for a long time, breathing hard, his hands shaking. He looked down at the small wrench she had left behind. It was still warm. She's not your princess, he whispered to the empty air. She's my girl. In the days that followed, rumors spread across the station. The Empress's daughter had been found at last, living among the humans. Imperial ships began to patrol the trade routes. The name Lyra appeared on every broadcast. Marcus tried to contact her, but his messages went unanswered. Then one morning a sealed message arrived at his terminal. The sender was unknown. It contained only a few words. She is safe. Do not come for her yet. Marcus sat back, his heart heavy but full of determination. He didn't care who she really was, princess or not. He had made her a promise and he would keep it. He looked out at the stars, his reflection dim in the glass. 10 years ago I found her, he said softly. If I have to cross the whole galaxy to protect her, I will. And somewhere far away in the heart of the Empire, a young woman with a golden mark stood on a balcony, staring up at the same stars, whispering the same words. The journey to the Imperial world was long and silent. Marcus sat beside Lyra in the corner of the golden transport ship, feeling completely out of place. Everything around him gleamed, polished metal, soft lights, guards dressed in silver armor. It was a far cry from the oil-stained corridors of Varelian Hub. Lyra looked calm, but he could tell she was scared. Her hands were clenched tight in her lap, and her eyes kept darting toward the stars outside the window. When the ship finally reached the Imperial capital, Marcus was speechless. The planet below shimmered like a jewel. Silver towers stretched high into the clouds, their tips glowing with sunlight. Floating gardens drifted between the buildings, full of strange, glowing flowers. The air seemed to hum with life. The ship landed in a private dock surrounded by banners of gold and blue. A group of guards stood waiting, their armor shining. Behind them stood an older woman in royal robes, her hair silver and her crown faintly glowing. Even without being told, Marcus knew who she was. Empress Aurelia Varelian, ruler of the Empire. When Lyra stepped down from the ship, the Empress took one look at her and froze. For a moment, the entire court went silent. The Empress's expression softened, her hands trembling. My child, she whispered. Her voice cracked and tears filled her eyes. Lyra hesitated. She didn't move forward, unsure of what to do. She looked back at Marcus, who gave her a small nod. Slowly she stepped toward the Empress. The court gasped. Some knelt, others whispered to each other in disbelief. Marcus caught bits of the murmurs. It's her. The lost heir. After all these years. When Lyra reached her, the Empress fell to her knees and pulled her into an embrace. I thought you were gone forever, she whispered. Every day I prayed the stars would return you to me. Lyra stood stiffly for a moment, then slowly wrapped her arms around the woman. I don't remember you, she said quietly. But I think I believe you. The Empress smiled through her tears. That's enough, my child. That's enough for now. The court began to cheer, their voices echoing through the great hall. The lost princess had returned. Marcus stood at the edge of the room, feeling small among the nobles and guards. He wanted to be happy for her, but something in his chest ached. She didn't belong to him anymore, not really. She was part of this shining world now. After the ceremony, the Empress ordered that Marcus be brought to her private chamber. He expected guards, maybe even punishment, but instead she greeted him kindly. You were the one who saved her, she said. You found her when no one else could. Marcus nodded. I didn't know who she was. She was just a scared kid hiding in a vent. I did what anyone decent would do. The Empress smiled sadly. Not everyone would risk their life for someone they didn't know. You raised her as your own. I just did what felt right, Marcus said quietly. You gave her what the Empire never could, the Empress said. A normal life. A family. Marcus looked down. She was the only family I had. The Empress's eyes softened. You still are, she said. You will stay here, won't you? As her guardian, at least until she finds her place. Marcus hesitated. I don't belong here, Your Majesty. I fix pipes and scrub floors. This, he gestured around the golden room, this isn't my world. The Empress smiled faintly. Perhaps it is time the Empire learned from yours. That night, the palace held a celebration. Lights filled the skies, and music echoed through every corridor. Lyra wore royal robes now, her mechanical arm hidden under silk and metal bands. She looked radiant but uneasy. When she saw Marcus standing alone at the edge of the hall, she quickly walked to him. You look uncomfortable, she said with a grin. I am, Marcus replied. Too much gold. I'm afraid to touch anything. Lyra laughed softly. They told me I'll have lessons, meetings, and ceremonies. I'm supposed to learn how to rule. She sighed. It feels strange. I just want to fix engines again. Marcus smiled. You'll figure it out. You always do. She looked at him seriously. Don't leave me, Marcus. He frowned. Lyra, this is your home. These are your people. You're my people, she said firmly. You're my father. Marcus felt his throat tighten. You've got an Empress now. She'll take care of you. I want both of you, she said. I don't care about crowns or titles. You raised me. That doesn't change. He didn't know what to say. He simply nodded and put a hand on her shoulder. I'm not going anywhere, kid. Later the Empress approached them. She placed a gentle hand on Lyra's cheek and looked at Marcus. I owe you everything, she said. If there's anything you wish for, name it. Marcus thought for a moment. Just let her choose her own path, he said quietly. Don't make her into something she's not. The Empress nodded. She will be free to choose. You have my word. The celebrations continued long into the night. But while others danced, Marcus found himself standing on a balcony overlooking the shining city. The stars above were the same ones he had seen from the small window of his room on Verelian Hub. Lyra joined him, her dress flowing in the soft wind. Do you ever miss the station? She asked. Sometimes, he said. It was quieter. Fewer people watching us. She smiled. We can go back someday. After everything settles. He looked at her with a faint smile. You're the princess of half the galaxy now. I don't think they'll let you clean air filters anymore. Lyra laughed. Maybe not. But I can still fix things. Maybe not machines, maybe people. Marcus nodded. That sounds like something worth doing. They stood in silence, watching the night sky. Somewhere out there was the old life they had left behind. A life of work, laughter, and small comforts. But now a new chapter had begun. And though Marcus still felt like a stranger in the world of silver and gold, he knew one thing for sure. Lyra hadn't changed. She still had the same heart, the same spark, the same stubborn kindness that had once saved them both. He glanced at her and smiled softly. You'll make a good Empress someday. She shook her head. No. I'll make a good Lyra. And for the first time, Marcus believed that the galaxy might finally have hope again. Life in the palace was not peaceful. The silver walls that once seemed beautiful now felt cold and heavy. Every day whispers followed Lyra through the corridors. The nobles bowed to her face, but behind her back they doubted her. Some said she was unfit to rule. Others claimed she had been poisoned by her years among humans. The generals were the loudest of all. They said she was too soft, too kind, too human to lead an empire built on strength. Lyra tried to ignore them. She studied history, met with diplomats, and learned to speak the language of leadership. But Marcus could see the strain behind her smile. Each day the weight on her shoulders grew heavier. Marcus stayed close, though no one really noticed him. To most he was just a servant, a mechanic fixing broken drones and power lines. He liked it that way, it gave him freedom to move where others couldn't. At night he walked the halls, keeping an eye on things. He didn't trust the nobles, and he especially didn't trust the guards who answered to them. One night, while repairing a service drone in the lower corridors, Marcus overheard two voices behind a pillar. She is weak, one said. The Empress's blood may run in her veins, but she thinks like a human. The council won't allow her to stay long, the other replied. They will find a way to replace her. Or, remove her. Marcus froze. The voices faded as the men walked away, but their words echoed in his mind. Remove her. He went straight to Lyra's chamber. She was sitting by the window staring out at the city lights. When he told her what he'd heard, she didn't look surprised. "They've been plotting for weeks," she said quietly. "Mother tries to protect me, but she's old. They think I'll destroy the Empire." Marcus frowned. "What are you going to do?" Lyra turned to him. "What would you do?" "I'd hit them with a wrench," he said flatly. She laughed softly, then sighed. "I can't do that. I have to show them that compassion isn't weakness. That mercy can build something stronger than fear." Marcus shook his head. "Mercy won't help if you're dead, kid." She looked down. "Maybe. But I can't become like them, Marcus. If I do, I lose what you taught me." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He stayed in the maintenance hall near her chambers, pretending to fix a ventilation unit while keeping watch. The palace was quiet, too quiet. Then he heard it, the soft hiss of a door opening. 3 figures slipped inside, dressed in black armor. Assassins. Marcus moved before he could think. He grabbed the nearest tool, a heavy metal wrench, and ran. The first assassin didn't even see him coming. Marcus swung hard, and the wrench hit the man's helmet with a loud crack. The second drew a blade, but Marcus ducked and struck again, knocking the weapon away. The third reached for a blaster, but a quick kick sent it flying. The fight was short but brutal. By the time the palace guards arrived, 2 of the attackers were unconscious, and 1 lay tangled in broken furniture. Marcus stood panting, covered in sweat and bruises, the wrench still in his hand. Lyra rushed out of her room, eyes wide. "Marcus, are you hurt?" He smiled weakly. "I've had worse days." The guards dragged the assassins away. The Empress herself appeared minutes later, pale with shock. "They came for her," Marcus said simply. The Empress nodded, her voice trembling. "It seems the Council's patience has ended." From that night on, security around Lyra doubled. But Marcus knew walls and guards wouldn't be enough. The real danger wasn't just from blades, it was from politics, from the poison of fear spreading through the palace. Days passed and the Council grew bolder. They called meetings without the Empress, spreading lies that Lyra planned to hand the Empire over to humans. When Lyra entered the throne chamber one morning, the Council greeted her with cold eyes. One noble stood and bowed stiffly. "Your Highness," he said, "the people are restless. They question your loyalty." Lyra's voice was calm. "I have done nothing but serve them." "Then prove it," another snapped. "End the peace talks with the Human Alliance. Show your strength." Lyra's gaze hardened. "War is not strength. It's desperation." A murmur spread through the room. The nobles glared, their eyes full of anger. "Then you are unfit to rule," someone shouted. Marcus, standing by the wall, gripped his wrench tighter. Lyra raised her voice, steady and clear. "If mercy is weakness, then I am weak. If peace is betrayal, then I am guilty. But I will not rule through fear." The hall fell silent. Even the nobles had no words. After the meeting, Marcus found her alone in the garden. She sat beneath a glowing tree, her hands trembling. "Maybe they're right," she said softly. "Maybe I don't belong here." Marcus sat beside her. "You remember when you were little and you couldn't make your prosthetic arm work right? You kept dropping tools, getting angry, saying you weren't made for fixing things?" Lyra smiled faintly. "I remember." "What did you do?" he asked. "I kept trying," she said. "Exactly," he said. "And now look at you. You built a new arm, a better one. You'll build a better empire too." Lyra looked at him, her eyes shining. "You always know what to say." Marcus shrugged. "Nah. I just say what's true." That night, the palace was attacked again, not by assassins but by chaos. Riots broke out in the lower districts. Soldiers loyal to the council marched toward the palace gates, shouting that the throne must be purified. Marcus stood beside Lyra and the Empress on the balcony as the fires burned below. The Empress's voice was heavy. "They will not stop, Lyra. Not until they destroy you." Lyra took a deep breath. "Then I'll face them myself." Marcus grabbed her arm. "You can't go out there. They'll kill you." She looked at him calmly. "They need to see who I really am. Not a symbol. A person." And before anyone could stop her, she stepped onto the balcony and spoke. Her voice carried through the air, clear and strong. "I am Lyra Verelian," she said. "You call me weak because I show mercy. But mercy saved me. Mercy gave me a home. Mercy made me who I am. And I will not give it up." The crowd went silent. The soldiers lowered their weapons. Slowly the shouting stopped. From behind her, Marcus watched, his heart pounding with pride. She turned back to him, smiling faintly. "You see, Marcus? Sometimes kindness wins." He He grinned. Yeah, but next time maybe let me build a few more walls first. Lyra laughed softly, and for the first time in weeks, the palace felt alive again. The storm had not passed, but the first light of peace had begun to break through. Years passed and the empire slowly became something new. The silver towers of the capital still shone, but now, so did the hearts of the people. Lyra Varelian, once a frightened child hiding in a vent, had become the empress her people needed, not one of fear and command but of kindness and change. Under her rule the old laws began to crumble. The strict caste system that had divided the empire for centuries was torn apart. No longer were the poor born to serve and the rich born to rule. No longer were other species treated as tools or slaves. Lyra stood before the council one day and said, "If we are truly strong, then we can lift others, not crush them." Many had doubted her at first. Some nobles tried to resist, holding on to their power. But one by one they fell silent, not because of threats or violence but because the people began to believe in her. Her words spread across planets, across ships and colonies. She became known as the Empress with a human heart. And through it all Marcus stayed close. He refused every title, every honor. The Empress offered him land, wealth, even command of the Royal Engineers, but he only smiled and said, "I'm fine with my tools." So he kept doing what he had always done, fixing things. The palace's machines, the station's drones, the broken generators of the outer colonies. Whenever something stopped working, Marcus was there, wearing his old janitor uniform with the same stubborn pride. But there was one thing that had changed. Wherever he went, people recognized him. They bowed their heads as he passed, not because of his rank, but because of who he was, the man who had raised the Empress. The man who had taught her how to be human. He didn't care much for the attention. He only cared that Lyra was safe and happy. Sometimes he would find her in the palace gardens, sitting under the same glowing trees they used to talk beneath years ago. One evening he found her there again, wearing simple robes instead of royal ones. She was tending to a small flower bed with her metal arm. When she saw him she smiled. "Still working late, Marcus?" "Always," he said, sitting beside her. "Someone's got to make sure your fancy fountains don't explode." She laughed softly. "They haven't exploded in years." "Then I must be doing something right," he said with a grin. They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars reflect off the silver towers. Finally Lyra spoke. "Do you ever miss it? The old days on Varelian Hub?" Marcus leaned back and thought for a moment. "Sometimes. Things were simpler back then. Just me, you, and a bunch of broken pipes." Lyra smiled. "You know, I'd give anything to go back for one day. Just to sit in that little room again." Marcus chuckled. "You'd last 5 minutes before missing your royal tea." She nudged him lightly. "You're probably right." Then her smile faded a little. "Mother's health is getting worse. She says she'll name me as the official ruler soon." Marcus looked at her carefully. "You ready for that?" Lyra took a slow breath. "No. But I'll try anyway." He nodded. "That's all you ever needed to do." When the coronation came, the whole empire watched. From the icy moons to the desert colonies, everyone tuned in to see the new empress crowned. Lyra stood tall, wearing robes woven from gold and silver light. The Empress Aurelia placed the crown on her daughter's head, her frail hands trembling with pride. Marcus stood at the back of the hall, dressed in his plain uniform. When the ceremony ended and the crowd began to cheer, Lyra's eyes found his across the room. She smiled, the same small warm smile she had given him as a child when she fixed her first machine. Later that night, there was a quiet knock on Marcus's workshop door. When he opened it, Lyra stood there holding a small box. "I have something for you," she said. He frowned. "If it's another medal, I'm not wearing it." She laughed. "It's not a medal." Inside the box was a simple tool, a silver wrench engraved with the imperial crest. Below it were the words, "To the man who fixed more than machines." Marcus stared at it for a long moment, then looked up. "You didn't have to do this." "I did," she said softly. "Because without you there wouldn't be an empress. There'd only be a scared little girl hiding in a vent." He smiled faintly. "You did all this yourself, Lyra?" "I just kept the lights on." She shook her head. "You taught me how to see the light in the first place." Years continued to pass. The empire flourished. Trade routes opened, wars ended, and new colonies were built where peace was possible. Humans, once ignored and overlooked, became respected allies. The Empress made sure of it. When people asked her why she ruled so differently, she always gave the same answer: "Because someone once showed me what mercy looks like." Marcus grew older, but he never left the palace. His hair turned white and his hands became slower, but he still wandered the halls with his toolbox, still fixing things that broke. When children of the palace staff saw him, they whispered that he was the man who fixed the empire. One day as he repaired a drone in the gardens, Lyra came to him again. She was older now too, her silver crown faintly glowing under the sun. She sat beside him, watching as he worked. "You know," she said softly, "they keep asking me to build a statue of you in the capital square." Marcus groaned. "Please tell them not to. I don't want birds landing on my head." Lyra laughed. "You'll never change, will you?" He smiled. "Not if I can help it." They sat together in comfortable silence for a while. Then Lyra said, "I used to think I was lucky that you found me. But now I know, it wasn't luck. It was destiny." Marcus didn't answer right away. He looked at her, the woman who had once been a frightened child, now strong, wise, and kind. "Maybe," he said at last. "But if it was destiny, I'm glad it brought me to you." As the sun set over the golden towers, the old janitor and the Empress watched the light fade together. In the end, Marcus never wore a crown, never wanted one. But his legacy lived in every corner of the empire, in every act of kindness, every word of peace, every bridge built between species. And to Lyra he was never just the man who found her. He was her father, her teacher, her friend, the true heart of the empire.